Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Bob Lam. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ShardSecure. I'm very honored and excited today to have two of our very special guests joining this webinar today, plus our own Joe Sorial. So with me today, first of all, is Amoroso, CEO and founder of TAG Cyber, and also former CISO at AT&T. Abhijeet Kulkarni, who is the Managing Director for Advisory and Google Cloud Leader at KPMG US. Also our own VP of Product, Joe Sorial, and myself. Thank you for joining us today to talk about data security and resilience for multi-cloud environments. And welcome. Why don't we start from giving a quick introduction of the two special guests. Ed, many of us know you as the longtime former CISO at AT&T, one of the industry leaders, and you built a very successful advisory research firm just focused on cybersecurity, but more recently in other areas such as climate. Can you tell us about TAG Cyber? You've been doing it for quite a number of years now.
Well, thanks, Bob. And thanks for including us in the webinar. Looking forward to the discussion. Research and advisory work has always been my dream to do this. I feel like in our industry, there's so much complexity and there's so much changing that I think for companies to have access to practitioners who can do unbiased guidance has been very useful. So that's what we do. And again, looking forward to our discussion today.
Great. And you work with vendors, but you also work with a lot of enterprise customers as well, right? Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 type.
That is correct.
Great. It's good to hear. Abhi, hey, thank you again for joining. KPMG is an alliance partner of ShardSecure. We're very proud of it. And Abhi is our main partner working with us. Thank you again for your time. I know you're super busy with all your Fortune 500 customers. Can you tell us about yourself, your role at KPMG Advisory, and maybe a little bit about the advisory business?
Absolutely. Thanks. And thanks again, Bob, for having me over. My name is Abhijeet Kulkarni. I'm a managing director with the firm. I'm our US leader for our Google Cloud security business, along with the sponsor for our ShardSecure relationship. As a lot of you already would know, KPMG is one of the leading cybersecurity service providers in the current space, in the current industry. And we serve all the way from banks to telcos to you name it. And Bob rightly put it out, about 98% of the Fortune 500 clients or the Fortune 500 are our direct clients. Having said that, my role is specifically around the cloud security space, focusing on data security, focusing on things that really help our customers to improve their risk posture and security posture, whether that is in cloud, whether that is on-prem, anywhere. Looking forward to having this discussion with all of you and sharing some of my insights from across industries, leading practices, and what ShardSecure and this relationship that we have with ShardSecure brings on table for all of you.
Right. Thank you, Abhi. So today this is the fireside chat format. I'm going to quickly touch on the topics that we're going to discuss, and then I turn it to the speakers. So first of all, I want to talk about, what are the trends you're seeing for cloud migration, data migration, given the environment that we live in, relatively uncertain global economic environment. And also, what in terms of the data, right? We are data company, we are data security, data resilience company. Who should we be worried about? What should we be worried about that are interested in attacking us and leveraging the data? Should we be insiders? Should we be hostile nation states? Or should we be trusting all the cloud providers, or maybe the cloud admins that sometimes we don't know who they are, right? So that's another important topic. And as we are hearing more and more, I love to hear Abhi's thoughts on it. Is more companies are moving to multi-cloud, right? What are the new challenges as companies move to multi-cloud for data security and resilience and privacy? And obviously, we talk about privacy regulations. We have a global audience here. KPMG is very global. ShardSecure, relatively small company, but we're also global. I'm sure Ed work with clients globally as well. So, especially in Europe, GDPR, CCP, and Schrems 2, and many other privacy regulations. But even in the US, right? I just watched it this morning. I think five new states just establishing new privacy laws, including such as Indiana. I think I read it this morning. But obviously in the US, California is the first one. It's unclear when we'll have a national privacy law, but we all have to pay attention to different state laws that govern data privacy. And also, many of you, I spend 110% of my time worrying about ShardSecure, helping our customers. But I think both Ed and Abhi spend a lot of time working with many different companies. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, in addition to us, for example, right? We're in the micro-sharding business and we have patented technology in micro-sharding. What are the new technologies you're seeing out there that are interesting, compelling, and really fit into the world that we live in today, but also in the next 5 years or so? So those are what we want to you have the discussion on, and then at the end of it, and then we would like to have questions. You can submit questions for the Bright Talk platform. Okay, so Joe, if you can just give us. So let me start with the first question. Okay, we are in an uncertain economic environment, right? We're talking about, for many years now, we're talking about moving the workloads to the cloud. In more recent years, moving the data to the cloud. Start with SaaS, and then now more cloud storage, right? AWS S3, Azure Blob, Google Cloud Storage. What are you guys seeing out there that is the economic environment slowing things down or accelerating? It would be good. Maybe we start with you, Ed.
Well, first of all, it used to be that all these threats that you're describing were people. It's like some hacker somewhere or some group. And it's still, there's still human beings kind of at the root. But I think, and I suspect that Joe and Abhijeet will agree, everything's automated now, and once you start plugging artificial intelligence into that, it changes everything. Then suddenly, the intensity of attacks become they become more complete, more real time, more comprehensive. They become a little scarier, I think. We're going to have to get way better at our defenses. And the good news is, the same automation that your adversary has access to, like AI, well, we have access to that too on the defensive side. So the next few years, I think, will be a story of successive advances in automation. I really think that's what will happen. And the human beings will curate, as we always do. But day-to-day manual things, like the idea, for example, of anybody doing any type of data analysis manual will just look ridiculous. We still do it. We call that threat hunting. And threat hunting will be this new thing. It will be interpretation. It'll be reporting. It'll be translating decisions into action. It'll be this human sort of activity. But anybody who expects a human to, beat a computer at data analysis is like chess. You can't beat the computer at chess. So I think that's my view. Like the next few years will feel very much like, wow, all these rote tasks are being automated. And what that begs is, as we set up security operations centers and as we train young people who want to come into cyber, they're going to have to contend with that. The jobs will not be like data analysis or analytics. It's going to be much more difficult, probably higher end interpretation of things. So I'm not saying life's going to get easier with automation, but automation is going to be the theme. It'd be interesting to see what everyone else thinks, but that's a trend I see.
Terrific points, great points here. Abhi, what are you seeing out there?
I think Ed definitely touched on the most critical, or I would say the elephant in the room, which is automation, right? The space around hyper automation, exactly what Ed was referring to, the space around hyper automation, where you essentially use automation for your daily tasks and responsibilities as well. Okay. And then tying it back to AI. Okay. So there is going to be a point in time, and then I can definitely, if I have to talk about AI, I know this session is not about AI, so I don't want to get into that AI discussion. But then how do you really leverage AI to automate things that you do on an ongoing basis? That is one area a lot of my clients of late have started having discussions with us in terms of, hey, what is that space when we move to cloud? Now cloud has obviously helped us optimize on our costs, okay, bring those efficiencies. Okay, our data, we are trying to bring our data in front and center of our customers and our BI analyst and our business, right? But then from how do we make it more efficient to run our BI model so that we can predict the right amount of business outcomes and get to that right stage, right? So again, if you look at the whole journey, starting all the way from bringing in the right set of automation controls, bringing in the AI into the mix, and how that translates into the business requirements and helps the business grow, is what our customers are essentially looking at. That's and in all of this, as organizations move, and I'll tell you this, right? 99% of the organizations have already moved to the cloud in some shape or form. Okay, it's just a matter of what category or what tier of data are they going to necessarily store in the cloud, and it's all industry specific. So that's pretty much what I'm looking at, what we are looking at in the industry.
It's interesting. We don't have to have AI on the agenda, and it obviously comes up in the first question. But do you see companies slowing down, Abhi? You have a lot of clients. Are they slowing down in the migration journey because of the current environment?
No. In fact, I see it exactly inverse. I see them accelerating their migration journey. I see clients moving their data. Like, again, I'm just giving a classic example here. Okay, a lot of my clients are interested to leverage Google Cloud, and I know we have a topic about multi-cloud later on. But then a lot of my clients look at Google Cloud to do their data processing and analytics, and look at leveraging AWS or Azure for their workload compute. Okay, and the reason why they are doing that is just to accelerate their business growth. The faster that they migrate, the better cost efficiencies, the better efficiencies that they gain, the modernized their stack becomes, and the modernized their stack is, the better it is for the business, and they can focus on the actual results.
Yeah.
So that's just the lens that I'm looking at. A lot of my clients have, in fact, accelerated their move to the cloud.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So what does it mean, right? From the threats and from the who should we be worried about, right? With automation, with AI, with migration.
Yeah, and I'll let Ed chime in as well. But then, in my view, and I have a very, and I keep saying this, right? Like, security is not a skill set. Security is a mindset. And the reason why I say that is because of the answer that I'm going to give you. And the answer is everyone. Trust me, it is everyone that you should be worried about. And that is where essentially trust but verify, the fundamental principle of security, comes into play, right? So I'm going to trust everyone. I don't mind. But then when it comes to securing, and when I am worried about, like, hey, especially when it comes to my business data, I'm going to be worried about everyone. So I'll need controls to protect my data whether that is from my engineers, whether that is from my BI analysts, whether that is from my end customers, whether that is from the super administrator, anyone. Each and every, it's end of the day, it is a human that is interacting with that data, with that information. And it's my responsibility to protect it. So it's in a very layman language, if I have to give you an example, right? We buy car insurance. Why do we have car insurance? We are not buying car insurance just to protect our car from a particular X brand of cars. We are buying a car insurance to protect the car from everything. And we are buying insurance to protect ourselves from all those use cases, specific use cases, right? So that is where having the right strategy to address those personas, okay, and identifying the right set of controls required to save those personas is important. Yeah, that's just my view of things. And I know some people would call it that as a very security focused view of the world. And I'm fine to take that. And that's how it is.
Interesting. Ed, I'm sure you have a lot of opinions on, on this topic and what Abhi just commented on.
Yeah, I agree with everything Abhi was saying. Bob, before you were saying who we have to worry about, and it had me laughing because you wish that we could start crossing some of those things off, but can't. I think it's worth saying a word or two about insiders, though. Here's my view. This may not be something that's universally agreed upon, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. It used to be when you ran data centers, but all your apps in your own data center, which was the norm. Now it's mostly hybrid. I don't think there's a company on the planet that doesn't do some sort of hybrid, even if it's just email that you're doing outside. But used to be that I would lie awake at night worrying about insiders because I was responsible for everything. It was just you'd hire people and you'd do background checks and they work in your data centers and they were inside your perimeter. They had access to everything. I would say that the transition to cloud has at least shifted some of that away from the CISO to a shared model. And I suspect that Microsoft, Google, Amazon, others do a better job of most smaller companies in vetting the administrators who have access to things. Maybe if you're Bank of America, you probably can do it as good. If you're a big monster company, I bet KPMG probably does a pretty good job of it. So when you're big, I get it. But for most companies, that insider problem is really tough. Think about that for a minute, about how difficult it is to identify somebody who just could be disgruntled, right? They're not done enough to be like some foreign spy or something. It's just somebody who's mad at you, who decides they're going to do something that may not be in your best interest. That happens. That's human nature. So it was always the thing that I didn't like to talk about because I worried so much about it because I knew you had a problem there. There could be a handful of people that could cause you a big problem. By moving to cloud, it always struck me that took a lot of burden off the CISO. Now you could argue you're just shifting risk, but I don't think it's totally that. I do think bigger companies tend to do a better job of managing administrative access, setting aside, crazy examples like we all read about Twitter and some others having, half the company having access to stuff. There have been cases where there's an issue, but they're not a hosting provider. So Bob, there's one thing. It's a nation state you have to worry about. You got to worry about all these things. The one thing that feels like it's a little better for the CISO with cloud, it would be insider. I think that there's a component of that that's gotten better. I don't know what the guys think, but that's been my observation.
It makes sense. I mean, I think what we're seeing, as you said, like the cloud providers actually doing a very good job with internal security, the shared responsibility model, right? Especially for mid-sized, smaller companies that makes sense to have, all in with the cloud. But what we're seeing with the largest companies, I'm sure both of you would agree, and I think Joe, feel free to add to your opinions here, is they're still very conservative in moving the sensitive data to the cloud, especially the banks, without naming anybody, right? The largest bank is still very, very slow. They talk about it, They're thinking about it. They're talking to companies like us to help with resilience and security. But it's still a very slow process. And
yeah, absolutely.
What does it take? Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? I mean, just hearing the guys talking about, you know, automation and multi-cloud and all of those things, and insider threat, right? Whether it's more under control, but still, you know, pretty difficult to detect. It's a bit of a perfect storm, and I sort of liken it to the initial, you know, rollout and adoption of cloud, where there was a certain amount of opaqueness that sort of came with it, and I don't think folks fully appreciated in terms of how much knobs and buttons and things that you had to push. It seems like we're going kind of down that direction now, where it's not just a single cloud provider, it's multiple cloud providers. It's automation, you know, is, I would say, not infancy stage, but it's coming along, especially when you start layering on some of the AIs. So it becomes a little bit unpredictable. So I feel bad for folks out there that are dealing with it. I think the mantra is now shifting to kind of more preventative. So yeah, my data is out there, but how do I make sure that it's very well encrypted? How do I make sure that, you know, if there's an attack or an outage or some sort of tampering, that resilience component is there. So it feels like, yeah, folks are, you know, concerned about going multi-cloud, but they're also more aware of some of the challenges and putting some things in place kind of early on. Like, for example, like a ShardSecure platform or a better monitoring platform that goes across clouds, to make sure that they're ready and prepared, so that, you know, things don't go sideways on them as they start rolling out to more and more cloud providers and getting the critical applications and data out there. Abhi and Ed, I don't know if you guys agree with that. Be interesting to hear your thoughts, because you're living it day in, day out as well with your clients.
Yeah, what are the challenges? What are the new challenges as companies, mostly large companies, but we're hearing some mid-sized companies now telling us that they're moving to multi-cloud, right? I mean, Abhi, you mentioned earlier, like between Google Cloud and AWS, Azure. Yeah. But what are the challenges? What are the new challenges from a data security and resilience perspective?
Yeah, let me start with this, right? Like, yeah, I did mention about multi-cloud a bit earlier, but then I would say 9.9 out of 10 of my customers are multi-cloud right now around it. And I'm very categorically calling out the decimal 9.9. I would have actually said 10 on 10, but then there are few who still are.
Yeah, I wonder who the 0.1 is. I'm so surprised it's not 10 out of 10.
That's on-prem. They're only on-prem.
You're spot on. Those guys are on-prem. They want to keep their workload on-prem. So yeah. But then so the one of the biggest challenges that I've always seen, and I help a lot of customers, you know, strategize, and I've helped a lot of boards, like when we are talking about, hey, strategizing, how do we start, you know, kind of building that heterogeneity in our environment. And again, heterogeneity is a principle which helps you with resilience, right? One of the principles that help you with resilience. So having heterogeneity in your environment also means, like, hey, the more platforms that you have, the better it is. Okay. But then it is also slightly going away from the principles of monolithic, you know. So it's like there has to be this fine balance, and that's where, when I come in, I help the customers identify that fine balance. The biggest challenge is consistency. Okay. How do you make sure your environment is consistent across A, B, and C and D cloud providers, or A, B, C, which is your on-prem environment, or A and B, which is your on-prem environment, right? Starts with consistency. The second area, I want to call out three specific large challenges that I have seen. Consistency, observability, okay? And again, it also ties back to consistency, right? Let me tell you this. Everything in security starts with observability, right? Like, if I'm not able to see a breach or detect a particular breach in my environment, okay, that's going to result into millions and millions of dollars of losses for you. Okay, so that observability element from day zero is so critical. A lot of our customers actually have, and I'll give you an example here again, right? Like, some of them use Cloud Security Command Center, some of them use Azure Security Hub, right? But then those are so platform-specific driven capabilities. Bringing in that single pane of glass across these two hyperscalers, and I'm just talking about two, but then you can have three. I have some customers who have like 6 environments. They have Ali Cloud, they have Oracle, like everything possible under the planet. So but then bringing that single pane of glass so that you are able to stitch all of that together and tie it back to your security controls is so critical. So that's the other challenge and struggle that our customers face. Third is specifically around data, right? And it will again tie back to the first two. Everything around data is so critical as on data, right? Like your data is so critical, and especially in the regulated industries like banking and capital markets, or you talk about healthcare data, right? The regulators are not going to stop you from putting your data in the cloud. Like, they are not going to say that, hey, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. That's not what the regulators are for. But then there are some very specific regulatory controls and compliances that, as long as you comply with those, the regulators are happy. Now, how do you make sure the compliance to those standards across your environments is consistent, is reportable, and is manageable? And to Ed's first point, is also automated to a certain extent. So that is the third biggest challenge, and also revolves around the data elements. I hope that gives some perspective in terms of what we see. There are a lot more other challenges, but then as long as like these three are the biggest themes is what I have mostly seen. Ed, over to you.
I totally agree with everything you said. I mean, I don't think I could say it any differently. The one thing about multi-cloud that is probably worth keeping in mind is that, competent teams can walk and chew gum. We can handle some complexity. I mean, in a legacy data center, 1,000 products running is a complete mess. So I often chuckle that I think managing a handful of clouds is usually a heck of a lot easier than the mess we used to have. So that's why I think multi-cloud makes sense, and agree with your point that that's the direction. But I think you laid it out very nicely.
Yeah, that was a terrific comment, Abhi. I think, as I said earlier, we're definitely seeing more customers asking for multi-cloud and looking for a solution to help them with security and resilience for multi-cloud. And I think Joe and I spend every day talking about that. And we have ShardSecure has a single API and work with the big 5 cloud providers. So definitely seeing a lot of demand out there. Joe, anything you want to add on this topic? Certainly that's what we focus a lot on.
Yeah, we do. It'll be interesting because I'm resonating with everything that Abhi just said, especially around observability and especially the data security component. So totally agree with everything that was said.
Yep. Just quickly, I know we have a little bit of time left, and from a privacy perspective, perhaps Ed, you can share some of your thoughts about global privacy regulations. In Europe, of course, GDPR, SRAMS 2. In the US, like different states are adopting new privacy regulations. What's your take on that, and how is it going to impact data security, privacy, and resilience?
Most of the people listening to us are probably cybersecurity or at least IT operations types. So for us, I think at least the vast majority of people in our orbit, we're going to let the lawyers worry about the policy parts of all of that, as governments make decisions about this or that. We'll take our guidance from them. But the obligation we all get is that when privacy regs like the GDPR and others become real, and GDPR certainly is in California, you see things in New York, other places, then the obligation for us is to know where the data is, have the ability to build accurate inventory, to have proper tagging, and to have the ability to remove data. Where's the big red button? This customer wants all their stuff going. Hit the button. It's got to all go away. That's on us. Like, the lawyers are not going to do that. So when you scatter across multi-cloud, you need good, solid distributed posture management across multi-cloud. And then you have to have the ability to manipulate as per the regulation. So our world, it's all about data management. I'd recommend that for those of you listening, if you're a computer science type or you're doing security or something, if you're interested in the legal part, that's fine. I actually teach at the law school at NYU, but I think that stuff, it changes so much, and it's I think for the most part it makes sense to just focus on our obligation, which is around data management, which is not easy. Finding the data, that's become a big thing. So DSPM is one of the new acronyms that you see all the time, data security posture management. That pops up almost every day now, and I think privacy has much to do with that.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. There's a plethora or a proliferation of categories that are popping up. I was at a conference last week, and there was just no shortage of alphabet soup. I think in the short term, there's going to be a lot of integration work that needs to happen to really kind of create that stack across vendors. Definitely see an amount of consolidation happening because it just needs to happen for the reasons we talked about in that, which obviously said, you don't want multiple platforms. You want kind of consistency throughout. So it'll be an interesting time to see how that plays out over the next year or two.
Good. That's great. Okay, I think we have time for one more question, one more topic to discuss about new technologies, about innovation. In a more challenging economic environment, certainly, it's always more challenging or difficult for new innovative company to be created. But it doesn't stop the innovation, right? It's actually the best time to innovate. What are you gentlemen seeing out there for new innovative technologies to secure data, data security and resilience and privacy? Abhi?
Oh, well.
You don't have to mention company names, but I think different product category would be interesting.
Yeah. And just one disclaimer that I should have called out this disclaimer at the start of this talk, but then I'm just calling it out now. So everything that I'm talking about is my individual opinion. Nothing constitutes KPMG LLP as a whole. Okay? Yes, while I'm a partner with the firm, but then given we are also public auditors, the information that I'm sharing does not constitute any legal or any grounds. Okay, it's my individual opinion. All right, so coming back to the innovation side of, and I should have called this out at the start, but then it's better somewhere. So from an innovation perspective, going back to my original statement, right? I think AI is the future of where everything is headed. Whether that is generative AI, whether that is responsible AI, again, these two things tie in together, right? It's not new. Again, I know a lot of people, we keep talking about AI. Of late, AI, there has been a lot of hype around AI given ChatGPT and the plethora of large language models which are right there in the market. Okay. But then if you look at historically, right, organizations like Microsoft, Google, these companies have been in the AI space for a long time. They have been predicting all of this. So now we are at a point where I think AI is getting commoditized. Okay. And we have started using AI as part of our daily life cycle. So AI is definitely a trending topic, a trending area, which all of us know. Talking about Gen AI per se, the applicability of Gen AI in security, I'll tell you this, Bob, and for the listeners as well, right? I can spend an entire day talking about how can you use Gen AI and security specific large language models to improve your security posture, right? Literally assume you are a developer and one of you, I'm pretty sure there is someone out here in the crowd who is an application developer. Imagine an application developer sharing his code with a security specific large language model, okay, and asking, hey LLM, just tell me, what does this security exception really mean and how can I fix this? Okay. Now that's the next level of it, and then tying in the hyper automation lens to it, where you take the output, you analyze that output, and then you fix it. That's the next level of bringing in efficiency. Now, some people might actually question this, and I'll tell you this, I get into these discussions every single day. Are we really talking about AI and automation everywhere? Because then in that case, it might impact jobs. It might directly impact me, right? Well, that's not the case. You don't have to be scared. If AI is getting smarter, humans are getting even smarter. For AI to work, you need smarter humans. And that's where the next topic of prompt engineering, right? I don't know how many of you have gone through the topic around prompt engineering. So to get an AI to respond to a correct with the right responses, you need to have right prompts. So there is a plethora of tools and solutions for whether for security or for general technology around the prompt engineering space. Okay, and last but not the least, the third trend that I've also seen, and I feel which will definitely be a good one, is the entire DSPM landscape, right? That Ed was referring to. Data is moving everywhere, right? So how do you control those? How do you control everything around data, right? Like, while there is a thin line between security and efficiency, right? I don't want my customers to say that, hey, you have secured my data so much that for me to access my own data, it takes me 10 minutes. Okay. So how do you break all those efficiencies? So that these are the three areas which I feel, and I've been seeing a lot of traction on, Bob, to be honest. Yes, there are a lot more in the technology space. There are some novel ideas, things that are happening, but then at least these are some which will keep us busy for the next 10 years, I would say.
That's great. Ed, quickly, any more thoughts on new innovations?
Well, I know you guys are too kind to bring it up, but you guys at Shard, you're doing some very cool things around data sharding and fragmentation. I think it's awesome. I think for multi-cloud, people should probably be in touch with you guys about how you protect crown jewels and so on. I think it's very creative. So
yeah, thank you.
Let's hope some people call you guys.
We're excited about that. We just very recently got the US PTO allowance of our Microsoft technology, so we're super happy and excited.
And you didn't ask me to make the plug. That I
appreciate that. We appreciate it. So that's a good ending, I guess. Joe, should we turn it to Q&A?
Yes, absolutely. I think we're ready, Bob. Thank you all. Really appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, and really appreciate your time on this.
Yep. So please go ahead and put the questions in chat. And let's see if we have any questions. I think I got a couple here. So let's see. So I think first question, this one's for you, Ed. It goes, do you see changes in compliance requirements creating hurdles for companies looking to adopt multi-cloud strategies?
Well, first of all, let me make sure you can still hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I got you.
Oh, great. No. So when we first started seeing compliance meet multi-cloud, it was a collision. It was a problem, because most of the auditors and regulators were extremely uncomfortable with cloud infrastructure. Well, it wasn't something that they'd grown up with. And I think you could almost describe the situation as the rug being pulled out from under them. They thought, things that were being protected locally in data centers where you could get your arms around the infrastructure, you could understand the source selections made, you could, sit and basically meet with the teams that had access to systems. Suddenly you're pushing this out into some black box. So they were terrified by that. I think much of that has changed. I think that compliance teams and regulators have come to recognize that there should be great confidence in these larger companies as they've met them. They've gone off and spent time with the larger cloud companies. This was similar to our situation in telecom, because we had in my own career, we would handle the data in transit for large companies that had to deal with massive regulatory and compliance requirements. And when they started moving things between data centers and locations using, for example, MPLS, that became the obligation of the carriers, the tier one providers, to demonstrate that there was some consistency between the policy controls locally and what was being done in the telecom cloud. You might as well call it that. So I think that it's getting much better. I think you could argue that in the long run, everybody benefits, because maybe the big cloud providers will come to find it a bit of a nuisance, because they do have a very big obligation here. But they'd be wise to be using tools like Shard, because I think one of the things that Bob and the team do is provide a wonderful control that overlays the infrastructure protections that you'd find, say, in Amazon or Microsoft. So I think the answer is that it's getting better. It's going to continue to get better. It's nowhere near the collisions that we had in the early days. So I hope that's a helpful answer.
That's perfect. Thank you. It's like this is scripted. Somebody asked the question, how does ShardSecure work, and would it have direct access to my data? So let me see if I can do the quick 1 minute or less pitch. So you can think of the ShardSecure platform as an abstraction layer that sits between things that create and access data and things and where the data is ultimately stored. So in the process, we basically break the data down into very, very small pieces so that it's unintelligible, which helps with security, privacy, and all of the other things. Now, in terms of us having access to the data, the platform actually sits in the customer's infrastructure. So with that, the ShardSecure, the company, does not have access to the data. In other words, it's not a SaaS platform where we're actively managing or monitoring the data or anything like that. It's all pretty self-contained. So it alleviates any concerns around that. Let's see, one more. I think this one is for Abhi. So it goes, how are your customers dealing with the complexity of managing disparate tools and services, which may be unique to each cloud provider in a multi-cloud environment?
I
think you touched on this a little bit during the talk.
Yes, that's right. And that's a fantastic question. I just want to make sure you're able to hear me. All right.
Yes, sir. Got you.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, that's a great question, and I did touch upon some elements of multi-cloud orchestration when we're talking about multi-cloud in general, right? So one, or rather, I would say one of the areas of focus across multi-cloud landscape is all these cloud service providers having multiple tools which do the same thing, but then within the fabric of their own environment. Okay. So a rationalization of these tools to provide you the outcomes that are aligned with your requirements is going to be the most important one. Now, it might as well be the first. It might as well be, you will see that there are redundancies across what, just to give you an example here, right? Like what Cloud Security Command Center in Google Cloud does versus the Security Hub in AWS or Security Center in Azure does, right? But then what they're trying to address is your underlying requirement. So if my clients, and this is where we help, right? Like we help our clients rationalize these requirements, bring them into a single pane of glass, and then operationalize a particular tool or technology which can give you that visibility in that single pane of glass. So that the element of rationalizing the requirements, identifying the key areas, and then identifying the specific controls is the ideal way to go to start off. I hope that answers.
Yep, that's great. Let me see if there are others. I think we are good at the moment. So let me just take a moment. Thank you guys for your time. Great presentation. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we'll talk soon in the next set of webinars. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.